Eric Mother to Mother.com. Let's take a look at a phenomena I call wave cancellation. I'm just gonna get to this briefly. I'll have a video in the description talking about this in more details. Anyway, so what we're talking about here, we are looking at the RSI, and there's something I call a wave cancellation. And again, here is the playlist on my channel, on my YouTube channel. Again, it's called the wave cancellation. So let's just take a quick overview of that. And so the way it works is, let's say we take the RSI. Let's take the RSI here, and in the example I'm going to show, let me just use the example I'm going to show you. What happens is that we see that the stock, or the S&P 500, actually the RSI at some point did something like this, and you know, it goes on and on. But what we're talking about is this period here, and the way I can explain that is if you draw a line right there, let's call it somewhere around there, and it's getting a little bit confusing here, but what we're talking about is this distance here and this distance here are the same. In other words, let me try and do this, just bear with me. If we were to color this area here, like if you were to shade this area in, and this area, they would equal out. In other words, we can call that to be equal distance. So this space, hold on, so this space here cancels out this space here, and that's why I call it wave cancellation. Why is that important? Because what it really tries to suggest, in terms of the way I understand the market here, is, so all this action here, so the RSI is going up and down and up and down, and then it did this, down and up. Actually, what it wanted to do was stay flat during this period. The RSI wanted to be flat during this period, but just so that it can play games with all of us, the market chose to do this. Up, cancel that move, and then go back to the area here. So all this period here is what I call cancellation. In other words, it shouldn't be there. The market did this just to play tricks, because what the market wanted to do was be flat during this period. I hope that makes sense. In other words, and the example will make it clear. In other words, let me try this one more time. What the market really wanted to do was form this RSI line this way. So this is what the market really wanted to do. The RSI should look like that. But in reality, it ended up forming this move here, which I contend is a wave cancellation. And this is just intended to confuse. So, without further ado, let's take a look at the example. We should make it a little bit clearer. If you take a look at the S&P 500 in the current market being August 25th, 2016, this is 1 year daily. There is a wave cancellation space here that I want to discuss. And it goes back to the lows on the RSI. So what we're going to do, we're going to draw a straight line here, this way. Now, this was a good line that eventually gave good support here for the lows. The market bounced on several occasions on the line here for the lows here, and even here it bounced and held the line, which is for these lows. But we did break through that. So we went ahead and broke through that. But now it's very confusing, because what this is trying to suggest is that our trend line should be here. Hope that makes sense. It is trying to suggest, because of the lows right there, that this should be the trend line connecting this low and this low. But that is not the way to draw it. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna show you where the wave cancellation is. And I know it's taking a while to explain this, but it is a little bit of a confusing concept. So if we draw it this way, this is a line, I'm gonna draw it through this period here. Through this period here. We can do that. Why? Because it is uniform activity below the line, back above it. And it's something I discuss in many videos. The fact that it is below the blue line and back above it suggests that we can actually draw it through that line if it touches many other points and is more relevant. In other words, this blue line seems to be more legit because it connects to many lows. In fact, the reason why I'm drawing it here is because the market is coming back to test that line. Bouncing on this line would be bullish, yet failure to hold that line would be bearish, because that would be a change in what the market is trying. So a break of this line would be bearish. But before we get there, let's talk about the wave cancellation, which is the topic here. So I'm going to draw this here. The reason why I know this is correct from experience is, take a look at the space here and this space here. Those two areas in theory cancel out. In other words, this drop here, this blip cancels out with this blip. And consider what the price action was doing. Here, the market had a strong move higher, followed by a strong move lower. All that was confusing people. And eventually we can see that the market negated that move, because ultimately it would go back to record new highs. So this period here and this period here, very confusing. Markets heading in different direction. Again, let me just discuss that for a second here. In theory, or in reality, the market went up, sharp move, down, and then up again. Very confusing. But if you take a look at the RSI, you can see that those two periods, this period here for the move higher there, and then this period lower for this move lower, the RSI tends to cancel out. And we know it's legit. It's a wave cancellation. In other words, the market wanted to be flat. The market wanted the RSI to be like that. But because it wanted to play tricks, it chose to do this move and then cancel out that move by this move. Hope that makes sense. And now we know it's relevant, because if you draw this line based on the wave cancellation, so we draw this line here, understanding that in reality this line here is where the market wanted to stay flat here. So this line is legit. In other words, in our heads, this doesn't exist. Hope that makes sense. Because of the wave cancellation, this canceling this out, right? We take the medium, which is assuming that this is where it's playing out, that this line is legit. It's legit also because it connects to other lows. So this line has already demonstrated itself as being meaningful, and now we are seeing the market back to this level. By understanding that slight principle here of wave cancellation, we know that a break below that line would actually be the signal that the market is finally showing that it is beginning to move lower. And at the same time, we know that if the market bounces on that line, then that bounce on that line would suggest that the market is due to test the recent highs. So that's very small distinction does set the stage to the market either bouncing or moving lower. So again, in discussing this period here, let me just make another attempt of explaining this period right there. So the market went higher, dropped, came back. What I am suggesting is, because of the equal distance between the two, what the market actually wanted to do was just go flat. And all this business of the market going up and down and then up, all this business, all this is just for confusion. In reality, what the market wanted to do was go flat. And once you understand that, you can incorporate that in your in your analysis, because you negate this sharp area here, you negate that movement, and what you do is understand that at that period the market was flat, right? You assume that it is flat, and so when you draw your line, you see that it makes more sense. You draw your line here as opposed to drawing your line, let's say, here. Okay, now because the chart is in front of us, why don't I spend a couple of seconds here or minutes just discussing this low, because this low here, so this low here in price short term led to a profitable move on hindsight. So I am digressing here, but just want to cover that. How would we have known that this was a potential rebound area? Couple of observations. Number one, a very nice rejection, uniform activity below the 200-day moving average and back above it. So it tried to go down one day and was rejected the next. That's good action. That bounce on the 200-day moving average was good enough. Now let's take a look at the RSI, which is my favorite way of looking at it, and we go back to this entry here. So this was the lows, of course. On hindsight, we can use that information. We see that this is where the RSI jumped above this range, so we know the RSI movement there was critical. The stock is telling you that itself. You are not over analyzing this, so you are using the stock's own behavior to determine any future entry point. So you know that was a good price entry because that was the low. This is where the RSI moved out of a range. There's no debate about that. So we draw a line from here, and you know the drill. Anytime we come to this same line and show uniform activity bounce, that tends to be a nice entry. Was that correct? Of course it was. So there is your other reason to have bought this, other than the 200-day bounce. There is another way to look at this, and this is based on the previous resistance line. If you take the highs there and the highs here, extend it out, should be something like that. You can see that once we broke out here, so let me change colors here. Once we broke out above that range, which is this period here, let's make sure this period here, the stock or the SPX has never looked back, and ever since then, every time it bounces on that blue line, it tends to have a reaction to the upside. And recently here during these lows, it went below that line and back above it with uniform action. So there again is another technical reason why this confluence of support lines and the 200-day moving average gave some indication at the time for those of us who are watching that the market more than likely was poised to recover after this drop here. So anyway, the video was about wave cancellation, but towards the end, yes, we did discuss how to time some of these short-term turnaround situations. Eric Muathe with Muathe.com. As always, good luck, peace, and you know the drill. Peace and blessings. Bless, 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 bless. Mwah, mwah. Bless, 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 blessings, riches, blessings, riches, blessings, blessings, blessings. Are you still here? How come? Bless, be blessed, be blessed. Mwah.